The FBI has conducted a number of politically sensitive investigations in the past couple of years, and no single agent has been more closely involved in more of them than Peter Strzok.
As a former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI for Counterintelligence, Peter Strzok was a major player in the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private server, even participating in Mrs. Clinton's lone interview with the FBI in July 2016.
No reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
And Strzok reportedly helped persuade then FBI Director James Comey to forego prosecution of Mrs. Clinton. That same month, according to published reports, Strzok was one of a dozen FBI officials who received the dossier, the compendium of salacious and largely unverified allegations about Mr. Trump and his associates that was bankrolled by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, and which the FBI may have used to launch a counterintelligence probe that encompassed FISA surveillance on a Trump campaign advisor.
No collusion. No collusion.
Then Strzok became a top figure in the probe of alleged Trump-Kremlin collusion led by special counsel Robert Mueller, until July of this year, when Mueller learned Strzok had sent a colleague text messages said to be critical of Mr. Trump and supportive of Mrs. Clinton, and removed him from the special counsel team.
Those text messages in question deal with FBI agent Peter Strzok sending these texts to FBI lawyer Lisa Page, with whom he was romantically involved. Here's one of them.
Quote, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way Trump gets elected. But I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40.
What is the insurance policy? And why is Andy, who we think is Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director, why is he involved in this? There's also this text exchange. We edited out the middle part, which was a web link. Page writes, "And maybe you meant to stay where you are because you're meant to protect the country from that menace." And Strzok says, "Thanks. It's absolutely true that we're both very fortunate. And of course, I'll try and approach it that way. I just know it will be tough at times. I can protect our country at many levels. Not sure if that helps."
During the Republican convention, Strzok ridiculed the Trump family, messaging Page in all caps, "Turn it on, turn it on!" 3 exclamation points. "The douchebags are about to come out. You can tell by the excitable clapping." Keep in mind, this is the man the New York Times described as, quote, "one of the most experienced and trusted FBI counterintelligence investigators." Other fawning accounts in the press painted him as a fusion of Sherlock Holmes, J. Edgar Hoover, and Batman. When you read his text, Peter Strzok sounds a lot like the 6th host of The View.
And Fox News has confirmed, as first reported by Sarah Carter, that Peter Strzok also oversaw and participated in the questioning of Michael Flynn on January 24 that led to his guilty plea last week. And we've confirmed that it was Peter Strzok, as first reported by CNN, who changed James Comey's draft language in the Hillary Clinton decision from grossly negligent, a phrase that carries possible criminal penalties, to extremely careless, a phrase with no real legal implications.
Did you make the decision not to recommend criminal charges relating to classified information before or after Hillary Clinton was interviewed by the FBI on July the 2nd?
After. If colleagues of ours believe I am lying about when I made this decision, please urge them to contact me privately so we can have a conversation about this.
Well, now the FBI has come out with these documents that suggest that that decision was made well before that time.
These are the papers that we've just obtained, and it shows very clearly that James Comey felt that Hillary Clinton committed crimes. Somebody rewrote it. It appears to be Peter Strzok. And what would his motivation be? It's revealed in his emails with Lisa Page when she writes, "You are here because you were meant to protect the country from that menace," meaning Donald Trump.
Fox News was the first to tell you about the abrupt demotion of Bruce Ohr, the Associate Deputy Attorney General, who was stripped of that title and his 4th-floor office at Maine Justice amid an ongoing investigation into his contacts with the 2 leading figures in the controversy over the dossier, meetings that DOJ officials told Fox News Ohr had withheld from his superiors. House Intelligence Committee staff uncovered that Ohr met last year with both Christopher Steele, the former British spy who authored the dossier with input from Russian sources, and that Ohr also met last year with Glenn Simpson, the founder of Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm that paid Mr. Steele with funding from the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Now Fox News has confirmed that Nellie Ohr, an academic Russia expert and the wife of Bruce Ohr, worked for Fusion GPS last year. indeed was paid by the opposition research firm through the summer and fall of 2016, a timeline that places her on the company payroll around the time the dossier was funneled to the FBI, and perhaps up through the election, some 2 weeks after which her husband met secretly with Glenn Simpson. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman Nunes told Fox News in a statement today is looking into all facets of the connections between the Department of Justice and Fusion GPS, including Mr. Orr, unquote. DOJ, which initially claimed that Bruce Orr had been stripped of his top-line duties because he was holding down 2 jobs at DOJ, and that was, quote, unusual, today had no comment about the revelation that Mrs. Orr worked for Fusion GPS last year.
Let's get some analysis and perspective on all these stories from House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina. Joins us here in studio. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's start with James' story about this FBI official who has kicked off the Mueller investigation. How serious do you think this is, knowing what you know about it now?
It's incredibly serious. He was one of the agents in Secretary Clinton's investigation. He was on Mueller's special counsel. He has anti-Trump, perhaps pro-Clinton texts. People have the right to assume the people that are investigating them are objective and have not already made up their minds. That's why we need to see the text and we need to interview this special agent. But the Bureau's had a really bad last 18 months, and this makes it worse, frankly.
If Strzok changed the language, as is being reported in the Clinton situation for Director Comey, from grossly negligent to extremely careless, is that perhaps alone grounds to reopen that case?
Well, I don't think they need any grounds to reopen it. I mean, the FBI head was picked by Trump. The DOJ head was picked by Trump. Rod Rosenstein was picked by Trump. So all of the old actors are gone now. They don't need a reason. There's no statute of limitations. They don't need permission to reopen something. I do find it interesting the FBI changed the words grossly negligent, which is exactly what's in the statute, to extremely careless, which is a synonym. It's just not what's in the statute. Another reason we got to get this agent in and then Comey in to understand the decision-making back in 2016.
All right, take a listen, Senator Mark Warner and Senator Dianne Feinstein over the weekend.
This president has been obsessed with this investigation, always saying there's nothing there, but each week another shoe drops. Now the president somehow saying he fired Flynn because he knew Flynn was lying to Pence. Well, if he knew that then, why didn't he act on it earlier? It raises a whole series of additional questions.
What we're beginning to see is the putting together of a case of obstruction of justice.
Obstruction of justice, that is the going case up on Capitol Hill being talked about.
Only because the collusion case hasn't been made. I mean, keep in mind, so 2 of these folks that you just showed, they were talking about collusion this time 6 months ago, but there's no evidence of that, so now they pivoted to obstruction of justice. It's an interesting legal argument.
What about the legal argument? Alan Dershowitz says you can't make it against the president. Other people say they point to Nixon and Clinton and the political case that's made in impeachment. Where are you on the obstruction of justice?
I would say 2 things. I think the chief executive can obstruct justice. I would disagree with Professor Dershowitz. I just think it's really, really hard when you have full pardon power, plenary pardon power, and you are the chief executive and can direct what is and is not investigated. Also, Brett, keep in mind, this is the same president who said he liked Bill and Hillary Clinton and didn't want to see anything bad happen to them. Is that obstruction of justice? Are the Democrats complaining that he weighed in and tried to influence a decision with respect to them? I wish he'd stay off Twitter. I really do. I wish he'd quit commenting on ongoing probes. But the obstruction of justice, remember, that started being discussed when Comey had these memos that he said he made. I've read the memos. I've read every one of Comey's memos. They would be defense exhibit A in an obstruction of justice case, not prosecution exhibit, defense exhibit A. If Comey felt obstructed, he did a masterful job of keeping it out of any of his memos.
Last thing, how does the FBI go from assessing that Flynn made a mistake to deliberately lying to the FBI in a plea agreement, something that Michael Flynn agrees to?
One of 2 things. Either they were wrong when they thought that he just simply made a mistake. Keep in mind, he knows whether or not he was lying, and it may be that they thought he wasn't, but he raised his hand and said, yes, I was. Or it may have been they said, look, we're going to not investigate this other stuff, but we need you to make a 1001 plea, and you need to plead to making a false statement. I can tell you, Brett, when all you got is a false statement to a federal law enforcement officer, you ain't got much. That's usually the very bottom of the barrel of what you make people plead to. It's no prison time associated, and you have made that witness, frankly, incredible in front of a jury because they've already admitted to lying. So it's either he knew he was lying and the Bureau didn't, or they have worked something out in lieu of other charges.
Was the dossier actually used as an impetus to start the investigation into Russia? You know, were people being paid that were affiliated with the dossier?
Was it part of what was taken to the FISA court to allow spying to take place on Americans who were associated with the Trump campaign?
If Peter Strzok and others, including Comey, set out to exonerate Clinton for purely political motives in the face of overwhelming evidence of criminality, that is obstruction of justice by Strzok and Comey and others.
And most importantly, I think they deserve to know whether that wiretap application was in any way related to the dossier. And if it was, whoo boy, that's a scandal.
I would need to point out those are very good questions, but we don't know the answers. There's no evidence at this point that it was used.
Because they've been asking for those answers for so many months, and the FBI and the Department of Justice, the special counsel, everyone's been stonewalling and obstructing and failing to answer those questions.
So this is the deep state, as you've often referred. The deep state is a group of partisans who have been together for 20 years. All these guys are thick as thieves. They conspired to unseat and undo the election, unseat the president and undo the election. The emails prove it. Look at the emails. The most telling email of all is the email in which Strzok's lover says to him, "You were meant to be in this position to save the country, to save the republic."
Don't the American people find it a little disturbing that Andrew McCabe, the #2 at the FBI, Jim Comey, and this guy Peter Strzok would be thrown off a jury if they were appointed to this case? They would be thrown out of the jury pool like that. And yet these are the three people responsible for this banana of public justice?
The FBI at the top is dirty. Hillary Clinton is dirty. When the FBI writes an exoneration before the investigation is over, that is wrong. And don't you come out and tell me that everybody does it. Nobody does that. You do an investigation and then you make a decision.
Is this going to last a long time, do you think, in your assessment, looking where we are right now?
I think the Democrats want it to last until the next election cycle, and it's our job to do a thorough job, but also not let it unnecessarily be prolonged.
It's also worth asking whether the real division in government isn't between Republican and Democrat, but between bureaucracy and people trying to hold it accountable.
He's got to fire Mueller. He's got to shut this down. I'd say to the American people right now, as a former federal agent, you're getting worked. You're getting worked. You're being played for fools.
How close do you think we are to now getting to the truth, and who's in trouble tonight?
Well, I think Congress is going to demand the truth and begin holding people in contempt of Congress if they continue to defy
Hillary Clinton, should she be worried tonight?
Oh, Clinton should be very, very worried tonight.
Should Huma Abedin be worried?
Yes.
Cheryl Mills?
Yes.
James Comey?
Yes.
Robert Mueller?
Robert Mueller, you know, it's hard to say because he does have a distinguished record. However, the people he put on this special counsel team.
Is it not clear that by now he has an agenda?
Clear bias.
Rosenstein, is he in trouble?
Oh, yes. He's conflicted out of this case. He refuses to
Andrew
do so.
McCabe?
He's in big trouble.
Sarah, who's in trouble
right.
tonight? Who should be worried tonight based on what we now know?
I think Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is going to be in big trouble. I know that Congress is looking at him now. They probably are going to try to get his text messages or subpoena documents that he, you know, what he's been involved in from the FBI. I think.
How about Comey? Let's go through the list. Comey.
Yeah, I think Comey's in trouble. I think looking at this, they're definitely going to question him and ask him, why did you change this? Yes, I believe
Hillary
so
Clinton?
too. Oh, yeah, I think she's been worried about this for a long time.
Cheryl Mills?
Absolutely.
Uma?
Absolutely.
Anyone else you can think of?
Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. I mean, I think they're already in trouble.
Yeah.